All right, everybody. After a long hiatus, we are officially back. We have a bunch of episodes recorded and a bunch forthcoming that we will be releasing. This podcast is coming back. That I hit a phase of life where I just was so busy and dealing with so many other things that I had to put this on pause for a little bit. And so to the guests who have been waiting for the episode to release, thank you for your patience. To those of you who are our audience, thank you for your patience. And to those of you who have subscribed, because this podcast has kept growing enormously while I haven't even been posting anything. Thank you very much for all of your support and all of that. But all of that out of the way, we're back. I wanted to bring on some people who I really respect and enjoy, and a few familiar faces to start things off with, people that I enjoy chatting with. And one of my favorite people that I've ever interviewed in the whole world, and one of my favorite bands of all time, is Wolves at the Gate, and is Stephen from Wolves at the Gate. And so we actually broke down their new album, Wasteland. It's a concept album. It's a concept piece, and we dive into the songs, into the meanings, into the heart behind it, and really just chat about a lot of the things that the album deals with. Sin, being stuck in a world that feels like it's kind of caving in and it doesn't live up to the hype that it produces, and searching for more. That's what the Wasteland is all about. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Hope you enjoy listening. Love Stephen, love Wolves at the Gate, love what they're doing. So without further ado, let's dive in. Well, all right, Stephen, man, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm doing better now that you guys have released another album, where that was something that made me happy in the last little bit. You've been on this podcast a few times. You're actually I very much enjoy chatting with you. One, because I am genuinely a large fan of your guys' heart and your work. But I've also found you to just be a really interesting person to converse with and to dig into your lyrics a little bit. And so
that's good. I'm glad.
Yeah, where I really do appreciate it. But for maybe those who don't know who you are, especially as the podcast took a little bit of a break and now we're back for a new season, do you want to give just a little intro as to who you are, who Wolves at the Gate is, and give us a little glimpse into that world?
Well, my name's Steve Cobucci. I sing and play guitar in the band, and we started the band in 2008, so do the math. It's been a long time. We just finished putting out our 6th full-length, technically our 7th. The last record we did before this was a cover album, but we'll just say this is 6th of our material. And so, that's, I could tell you a genre of music, but I'm probably wrong. People disagree on what our genre is. Yeah, I don't know what our... Yeah, it also depends on what record it is too, because we've made lots of different things within the alternative world. But if you're into alternative music on the heavy spectrum and even on the more chill spectrum, we've got a little bit of something for everybody. So
yes, you do. Well, again, I'm a big fan of the stuff you guys have done. Where I've been a fan since 2015, I think, is when I became aware of you guys as a band, and I've really, really appreciated the art and the stuff that you guys make, especially lyrically. I always find how you guys convey lyrics and talk about faith or just life in general really incredibly helpful. And so we chatted a little bit ago when you guys were doing some promo stuff for your previous album, not the cover album, but Eulogies. I had the privilege of knowing for a little bit that something more was coming, because I think I asked you off camera, being like, is more coming soon? Is something going to happen? And you were like, yep, stuff is on the way. And so when you began releasing stuff, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I've been waiting quite a while for this. Where your cover album held me off.
Too.
But
Us too. Yeah.
And so it's really cool because you guys for this album have done a lot of things that are quite different and intriguing, where especially among your fan base, there's a lot of talk and discussion. It reminds me of something similar to like 21 Pilots does something similar, where they've done albums where they seem to be creating some form of a world, because you guys have started to make these music videos that are very fancy. They're above your standard music video. It's like, oh, there's something more going on here. Where it seems like there's almost a story taking place within the music you guys are making for this record, Wasteland. And so I just wanted to ask you, what made you guys want to invest in something like that? Because it is different than previous records, to my knowledge, especially for music videos. Like you guys have often, it's often kind of like a one separate different thing. Do a music video, for whatever song. It's often kind of in its own realm. But here, things feel a little bit more connected. So, can you just dive into, for you guys as a band, what that's been like, and what made you kind of want to create almost like a little world within this album that you guys are exploring?
Well, I mean, I've always been a fan of bands that take a whole album
Mm,
and very clearly, like, they have a vision for it before they even sort of begin.
yeah.
I mean, it's hard for me to know exactly with certain artists, but when I think of examples of bands that, do that with albums, like one of my favorites is The Receiving End of Sirens, their first
Mm,
record, Between the Heart and the Synapse. Like, there's a very clear, like, sound and vibe and concept. There's other bands like Coheed and Cambria who do that,
yeah.
like,
Yeah,
for
they
all
do.
their music.
Yeah.
Thrice did the Alchemy Index.
Mm,
Um, and I've always thought the idea of, this like thematic or um, like concept record idea was really cool, but really ambitious and intimidating.
mm,
And I kind of just stumbled on the idea of it by accident, because
mm,
after Eulogies, I just started writing a lot of, I'm always just trying to write songs, but
yeah.
I was writing a lot more songs than I was used to. So there was a higher output of music. And I was
Mm,
just noticing, just in the way that the songs were sounding, I didn't have any lyrics written. Maybe a few songs had some lyrics and some lyrical ideas that were hammered out. But I started to notice that there was like a sound to it.
mm,
And I thought to myself, like, maybe now's the time to do a concept record. And I had no
mm,
idea. And I just started thinking about, you know, the reality is we're just trying to tell the same story as many
yeah.
different ways as we can and different components and pieces of it because we want people to, we're trying to find different ways to express um, the central message of the Bible, which is that God is a gracious Savior. Um,
Mm,
I mean, Jesus, his name means God saves. That's what he was named, and that's
yeah.
who God is, and that's what he does, and that's what his heart and his desire is. And so, trying to find different ways to deliver that message, and so um, I got the idea of just writing a story,
Mm,
um, sort of like allegorical and maybe in a way that like C.S. Lewis might have, or I mean, obviously, like I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings,
yeah.
and and so I thought it would just be cool to like write a journey type story.
Mm,
Also, again, I mean, reading Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress,
yeah.
a lot of these are examples of ways in which like I don't know what you would classify Lewis as. I guess he's a philosopher slash theologian, but more so like I guess a Christian writer.
Yeah.
Um, and Bunyan more of a theologian himself, but
Hmm.
the way that they used, yeah, like story and narrative and allegory and metaphor to help people understand some of the deeper
Mm,
things from the story of the message of the gospel. So.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's a really cool concept to take a hold of, and obviously for lots of people, that's been an impactful way to retell the gospel in a way that's unique. Or something like Narnia or the Science Trilogy
Hmm.
by Lewis, or Pilgrim's Progress by
Hmm.
Bunyan, or Lord of the Rings. Like it's cool to explore these themes in that kind of a way. Where I've
Yeah.
always found it really interesting, where there's some really helpful stuff out of there. And so in looking at that, I was kind of excited to be like, oh, what are they going to do? Where's it going to go? What's happening here? Because again, it's really different than stuff you guys have done before. Because yeah, you guys are regularly telling the same story, but finding new ways to do it. And even just when it comes to the actual music of the record is so different than I feel like stuff you guys have done before, where there's obviously similarities, but there's definitely a different sound to this album that hasn't been explored yet by you guys. And so that to me was really exciting. And one of the first songs that you guys dropped was Parasite, to kind of give people a glimpse into what you were doing. And that's when I was like, oh, this is actually going to be, I think I messaged you at one point. It was like, what's going on here? It feels like there's a lot, because the music video is way longer than just the song. Yeah. And I was like, there's a lot more going on. And in that song in particular, you talk about almost like whether you call it Satan or sin or death or whatever. It seems like you're referring to it as some form of a parasite that feeds off of people. And even interestingly enough, trying to read into your guys' imagery for the album and having the symbol on people that it feels like something connects to. Like, I've got all these questions. But for you guys in writing this song, unless I'm incorrect on my interpretation of this thing, what I find viewing sin or Satan or whatever as a parasite is an interesting concept that I've never really thought about before, of it like feeding on people and draining them dry. What brought that idea to you, and what made you guys want to drop that as one of your first songs to open up this album to people and give them their first experience of what you guys were working on?
Yeah, well, one, we thought the song was strong, so that's always helpful,
Yeah.
we like it, and so we're hoping other people would like it. But it also, I think, helps best explain, like in any sort of story, a good story has a problem. There's a problem that has to get solved. And so Parasite explains the problem that we all have by birth, which is we are born with a sinful nature. And the things, and really what Wasteland does is it elaborates on what that sinful nature does. And the uniformity of what we all experience being born. We're all born the same. No one's born with a greater or lesser propensity to sin. Everyone's just, we've all got the same stuff, That's what I always tell my kids. I was like, you're born the same stuff that I was. Yeah. And so your weaknesses are just like my weaknesses. They just look different because I'm almost 39, and you're almost 9. So they're going to look different. If mine ever start to look like yours, get an adult.
Yeah.
And so, Parasite, I felt was just a creative way to sort of paint that picture in this world of, a world of people that are born with this infection in their blood. And everyone they're either embracing it or they're trying to rid themselves of it. And when you embrace it, it's like intoxicating, and you're on this like endless like quest and search for more. And if you're trying to rid yourself of it, it's almost the same end, but just with different expressions. And so, that's where the idea comes from. And I died, a million deaths to live, a parasite that feeds upon my open veins and drains the river dry. Why do I feel this on fire? Sing this broken melody, my enemy still sings this siren song. Why do I crave misery? When I am made the pain I can't comfort.
His blood. We can't do it. Not yet.
You promised to help me.
Not like this. Stop this. Where's the skull? Where do I find it?
This just came to mind because when I first saw what you guys were doing, especially visually for the album, I'm someone who's a pastor, and so I know Christians' different reactions to things, and I wondered for you guys in thinking about this, that you chose to take a tone that was pretty dark. And I mean, your music is heavy, like it's not like it's but I wondered for you guys, was there ever a moment for you because especially in that first video, like it's intense what's going on. And part of I loved it, where I was like, dude, this is so well done. Like it feels like on par with an episode of The Walking Dead or something, where it's like this is pretty incredible. But I know for some people there would be a hesitation for something in that, especially in Christian art. And talking to lots of different artists who are Christians, that there is often a push to sanitize their art to a degree. And I can understand that and respect people who do lean towards that. But for you guys, you definitely didn't lean towards that in telling the story that you wanted to tell. What was kind of, did you guys wrestle with that at all? Or was it no? Yeah. Can you just dive into that a bit about what made you be like, no, this is the right tone. This is what we need to set. What was some of the thought process behind that for you guys?
Yeah. So there's a number of things. One, a lot of that stuff you're talking about really is a matter of conscience. And so I would never like sit here and presume to tell somebody they're right or wrong about certain things. But one of the things that we really tried to be mindful of is we wanted it to be real. And because if it's not real, it's not believable. Yeah. When you read about Paul looking on, in approval as Stephen is stoned preaching Christ, you can't sanitize that. Like when you do that, you miss all of when Paul talks about himself as the chief of sinners, if you don't have that understanding, you don't really believe what he's saying, because he is remembering who he was, and not only his relationship to what he was looking at within the gospel message, he recognizes who he is just as a man. And if we can't show that honestly, and the Bible shows that honestly, and it shows, we wanted to express that in a believable way, because one, again, like I've said this a lot, but our goal is we're trying to reach people who have either walked away from the church or don't know anything about the church, and we hope that it also blesses believers. But that's where my aim is trying to find a way to help people that don't know anything about God, is to help them understand who God is in the gospel. And so, but with that, we also didn't want to glorify, wickedness, and we don't want to glorify violence for the sake of violence. We wanted it to look, the violence had to be there because that is the reality of the story and the reality of the brutality of the wasteland, living in the wasteland. But we also didn't want to glorify and make it look like, oh, look how cool this is, and so we tried to toe that line, and we talked a lot about that and made revisions and edits, and because again, at the end of the day, we didn't want the conversation to be, look how edgy Wolves of the Gate is. We want people to hear, we want them to see the story. That's what we care about. And I didn't want anything to get in the way of that. And I'm sure there are ways in which maybe that got in the way for some people, but that was our best effort to do that and to be real, and to depict something that I felt was realistic.
Yeah. I felt really similarly as a viewer of it, of being like, I feel like you guys did a good job of that, where it struck the balance between being real, but not being like a Quentin Tarantino movie where there's some pleasure in things being over the top, where it's not there. It's more just like, oh, this is in a real world kind of a feeling. And things that you're like, ugh, that's intense. That you should feel that because it is intense. So I think you guys did a great job with that. Another song that you guys released was one called Synthetic Sun. And I find the concept of it really, really interesting. It reminds me a lot of, I've been recently getting into a lot of Timothy Keller's writings and a lot of the way that he saw the Christian faith, and in particularly sin and idolatry in people. And I find how he explained that to be really compelling. Where he often talks about how we essentially make gods out of things that aren't God, and they turn out to be not great gods that do enslave us. And in listening to this song, I felt a really similar theme, where you are talking about people who are born in darkness, but and they kind of embrace it to a point, and they see the sun and they want to board up their windows, like they're doing everything they can to hide from it, and almost they want to embrace the synthetic sun, the fake sun, instead of the real one. And I found that concept really, really interesting. And so for you, what inspired that song for you? And maybe what was the message you were hoping to send across to the listeners who are listening to that one?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is really just inspired by, second half of Romans 1, and John 1, in John 1, it says, light came into the world, but men love darkness rather than light. And it's not talking about anybody or any group of people in particular. It's talking about people. No. This is just the nature of who we are. And what you were talking about, when you were referring to, some of Keller's writings, I mean, the church has writings about, idolatry throughout all of church history, because we're not talking about little wooden talismans on our mantle. We're talking about there's a famous quote that our hearts are idol factories, and really we're looking to make anything our God, but they fail us and they kill us, because the reality is to make something a God, we don't realize the position and place of what God is. To make something God has to be able to shoulder the weight of being God. Yeah. So it has to be sovereign, omniscient, omnipresent, has to have all the qualities of God. And the problem is that the things that we make God can't be God. And so they utterly fail us, and they end up destroying us, because we end up living to serve these gods, to keep them alive almost. We have to protect them. And our whole life gets aimed at protecting this thing that gives nothing to us. It's just a bunch of empty promises. And so the idea of the synthetic sun is really, suppressing the truth of God and unrighteousness. We don't want God to be God, but we know we need something. We're going to want to make something our God, whether it's ourself or even some sort of false deity or whatever. And so that's sort of the idea. And again, it's just trying to give people like another chapter in the story of what the wasteland is like, is the people who have a parasite, infected blood, and they live in a world that's blocked out the sun, and they've created a synthetic sun to replace that, but even like the character in the story, he recognizes, but the synthetic sun is killing me, It's like anybody who lives only under artificial light, like I'm in my basement right now, looked up at these LED lights. If that's the only sunlight I got, that's not good for you.
No, it is not.
Was not designed to get LED light only, which is a good reminder for me to get in my basement after this, get some sunshine. But that's the picture. 'Cause we are the children born in the dead of night. Living in the dark, we are just killing light. Just another day that we've overrun, putting up the windows one by one. In a world that loves the blinding synthetic sun. Cover your eyes so you can see us. Cover your eyes so you can see us.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. And even for myself, I love what you say that it's not just, we're not just talking about like my statue of a false god that's in the corner, that the human heart is an idol factory. And even for people who would say they follow Jesus, there's always, it's interesting that the more mature you become in Christ, the more aware you become of things that you weren't aware of before as you journey on what you're going through. And you start to be like, oh, why do I do that, or why do I act this way? And it's not necessarily on the surface something that's blatantly like, oh yeah, that was wrong, but it was like, oh, my motivation's interesting. What am I
Yep.
putting there, even of what am I
Yep.
wanting? Where I find that concept really interesting. All of these different synthetic things that we're looking for affirmation or purpose, or even just to feel some form of peace from, that can't bring it, that enslaves it to it. So like if you care about people's opinions and you want to be well liked, and that's like your core motivation in what you do, you'll be a slave to people's opinions. Like it's actually not as freeing as it seems, or whatever you want to explore.
Yep, you're going to work to that end to get those things.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting, I would encourage everybody to think about that. You know, what are the things that if I don't have them, like it shakes me of my peace, like I feel anxiety, or I feel discomfort, or I feel depression, you know. And there are things, obviously, like good things that people should have in this life, but there's a degree to which it can affect us that is, I would say, like really dangerous for your soul. And, you know, the thing that I find is, you know, Christians are often the ones who are most offended by the notion that they have idols. Yeah. It's like, you never read the Bible, I guess, or at least the Old Testament for that matter. You know, oh, do you think just because you aren't making a golden calf in the wilderness that you don't have idols? It's like all they're doing is trying to find someone, like they're thinking, well, these other people do this and they get good things.
Yeah.
Okay, just replace this with the things that you do to get the good things you feel like you need in life, that are when you basically choose to not trust God, or trust in yourself, or trust in the government, or trust in the love of, you know, another person. Like there's millions of ways that we do this. Any sort of, I would say, peaceful, quiet thought will reveal the reality of that in all of us.
That's so good. Another interesting song, and I believe that this was another single. Death Clock was a single, correct? Before the album dropped. Yeah, dude, this song was very interesting. It has one of the, like, when I first got toward the end of the song, when you start to sing "I'm Calling for You," like I was just like floored, because I was like, I have never heard them sound like this. Like whatever this is very unique. And it sounds so good. Or even still now, when I listen to it, it still gives me chills, where it hasn't gotten old yet, of being like, there's something about the way that you guys composed that and built to it that was like, it's extremely powerful.
That's cool.
But lyrically, again, and I love your guys' lyrics, the concept that you're playing with of, time and the fragility of life, and the death clock that is somewhat existence. It reminds me, I'm doing a lot of prep right now because our church is going to be diving into Ecclesiastes, and it brought a lot of those images to mind. If people know the book of Ecclesiastes, where it really takes a hard look at life under the sun, and goes, there's a lot to be desired. And one of those things is the fragility of life and the passing of time. And so for you guys in writing this and orchestrating these kind of songs together, where does this fit? And where were you drawing some inspiration for some of those ideas of the death clock and that from?
Yeah, to be honest, like I don't know where I've heard that. I've heard the phrase before, but I don't know where I heard it before. You know, it's just kind of like you just hear things and the idea popped in my head, and I thought that would be a cool way to embody, you know, the character isn't, if you kind of read the lyrics, like the character isn't really dealing with the reality of the consequences of all these things that but he keeps expressing the fact that they aren't it. Like in Parasite, he ends by basically, you know, like the chorus says, "And I died a million deaths to live." You know, essentially, I'm just referring to when we choose to sin, we're basically saying, I'm choosing, the wages of sin is death.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And so when we sin, we're basically saying, I am earning the wage that should come to me, which is death, and not just the fact that we cease to exist on this earth. But what Death Clock talks about is the reason why everyone fears death is not because we like don't get to live on this earth anymore. Death has a sting, right? The Bible talks about that in First Corinthians.
Yeah.
And that's what the character is finally realizing, is that death has a sting, and it stings because there's a consequence. Because if we are left with only our actions on this earth upon our death, that's where the sting begins, because we have to face judgment for all of our sin. And that's what the character is starting to realize is, if you look at the song Smoke, it's kind of reminiscent of like in the Psalms when David's trying to hide his sin, and he feels like his bones are wasting away, and he's sort of realizing like he has an awareness of the fact that he's actually a sinner and he can't hide it anymore. And that's where it sort of leads into that idea of death clock, is because he's actually finally admitting death has a sting for a reason, and my death is going to sting because of how I've lived my life.
Yeah.
And that's what death clock is about. And so for the first time, we see the character sort of going like, I need help, but he's still pretty clueless as to what that help entails or where that even comes from. And so it's sort of like the way that people can sort of ambiguously go like God, if you can hear me, if there is a God, because we've seen that in movies and in writing, and or even hearing that from people. They know that there is a God, but they still don't want to acknowledge the reality of who he is, but they are desperate, almost sort of like those foxhole prayers type thing.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of where the story's leading at that point.
I know I hear. Yes, Mom. You said flee. I have nothing left. Take me.
Yeah. Again, I just want to say I really appreciate that this album is an album. Where it feels rare or more rare than maybe it used to be, just in how music is digested now, that it often feels like albums are just compiled singles and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a part of that that I enjoy, but it's cool when an album releases, I like to listen to it front to back, because I'm like, a lot of thought goes into where things go and why. But it's really cool to listen to an album and be like, oh, this is an album. It is telling a story that's moving through each song. And so, I really do appreciate that. And you guys knitting that together and stitching in the different pieces. That is very, very cool. Even like the transitionary songs and stuff, like everything is playing its part, and it's really unique and cool.
Yeah, it was and has been fun for us to do, especially because we did that in songs a lot. We would tell a story in a whole song, and I just thought, like, how cool would it be to do that with an album? And how much more space would that give me to like build the story? Because I like, there's songs of ours that are near and dear to me, like The Bird and the Snake, or Hindsight, or The Father's Bargain, and the way that they tell stories. But I always found it so hard in some of those stories to go like, man, I got to get so much into a song. And if you stop and look at how long all of those songs are, they're all close to like 5 minutes. And there's a reason for it, because you want to like, and maybe it's just bad. I need to get better at storytelling, but I'm sure there's great songwriters that can do it in 3 minutes. But but for me, it's like, you know what? Let's just like take our time and think about how to tell this story in the pacing that we like, and can feel more like a soundtrack or, you know, that sort of thing.
It's so cool. One of the songs that again caught me by surprise was toward the end of the album, and I think I'm saying this right. Memento Mori. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, Memento Mori. Yeah.
I found it. Well, one musically, again, it was so unique in the scope of what you guys have done that I was like, when it started playing, I was like, what is this? This is so different. And it caught me off guard in such a good way of being like, oh man, this is really cool to hear this fresh kind of sound coming out of you guys. But then lyrically too, just kind of the stuff that you're exploring there. And again, I'm steeped in Ecclesiastes right now. So it feels still like a nod and a wrestling with that fragility. And of course it's coming out of where the character has been. And so can you dive into that a little bit? And even specifically, I find it interesting whenever a song is titled something like that, where I'm like, that's not normal words, whatever you're putting in there. And to my memory, I don't know if that phrase comes up in the song at all, where what does Memento Mori mean? And what's kind of happening in that song for you, if you can peel back the layers a little bit.
So it's Latin for don't forget that you die, basically. Or don't forget that we all die, that sort of idea. And so in the story, the character is no longer like looking inward, but he's like looking outward and realizing that like, oh, everybody, like it's in the pre-chorus. We all know this pain. Basically, like he's seen people die. It's no longer the reality of like, I'm going to die one day. Like I've actually seen people leave this world, and the how sobering that is for us. It's like a reality check. Like even for myself, I remember when I found out that Kobe Bryant died. It shocked me so much, just because, you know, this wasn't like an obscure athlete in a weird tragic thing. This was like one of the best basketball players who ever lived, and died young in an accident. And it really just kind of shakes you and just makes you realize like, wow, like we all are going to die, you know. And obviously the song isn't about his death in particular, but this is where the character starts to look outward, and realizes this about everyone. And the song, you know, if you listen to the interludes are supposed to be like narrations almost of not only what is going on in the character's head, but also sort of messaging that he's hearing. And you can kind of see that when you watch the music video. You can hear bits and pieces from the main character's interaction with the character whose name is Gabriel. And so Memento Mori, the chorus is actually the character being spoken to, because you hear that in the interlude. You know, in the heart of the wasteland, I hear the siren song. And what's the siren song? It's relating back to Parasite, which is reanimate the pain against serpent. It's like dive back into sin, because that's the only thing that's going to help you kill the sting of death that you're feeling. It's like, go back, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. It's the invitation, essentially. But that's why it says, you know, I hear the siren song wasting away at the end of my rope. Another voice sings a chorus of hope. And so that's sort of the idea of the whispers of the gospel message that the character begins to start hearing. And that's why I say a chorus of hope, because it's actually the chorus of where the character hears hope for the first time, you know. And so that's kind of where it fits in the story.
It's too late for me, slipping closer to the bottom, in the traps of death, face to face, like dead words come up, the light burns, a page turns, another life that binds you just falls through the hourglass. So
such an interesting concept that's really real for people, of the calling of sin back to people to be like, oh yeah, life does suck, you should come back. Essentially to try to numb it. That's the thing, is it doesn't really help. It just kind of masks and then leads.
That's the one of the main lines in Parasite, is, everyone has basically their own brand of Novocaine, like to just not feel the reality of this life.
That's super powerful. The last song I want to chat with you about is Unrest. And I don't say this lately, and I've sat with it for a bit, because at first I felt this was like, maybe it's like because it's new, that it's more enticing. But I'm like, no, I actually think that Unrest is my favorite song you guys have ever done. And it's different. Like, there's other songs you guys have done that are impressive in different ways. But I was like, as a song, the stuff that you guys do and explore, especially musically and lyrically, I'm like, is so unique. That kind of post-chorus thing that you guys have with the Save Me is so unique, where I was so impressed. It was like, this song is so good.
Cool.
Where I'm a big fan of a lot of your work, but I was like, I think this is actually my personal favorite song that you guys have ever done. And even just lyrically, there was a bunch of moments where I was like, wow, that is a powerful lyric. Where there's one in particular during the Save Me part, where you say, how can I live like hell and ask for heaven to come? And I was like, oh my goodness, where did that come from? And so for you, in looking at the song, does it feel as unique to you as it maybe does to me? Where I'm like, you guys are doing stuff in there that I've never really heard you do. And even not just that, I haven't heard many people explore some of the sounds, and the stuff you're doing in that song is actually really unique. Where I'm like, a lot of effort, I feel like, must have been poured into it. But then lyrically too, can you dive into a bit of that?
Yeah, I'm actually just remembering now. I can picture the session that I was recording the demo in, and I probably had twice as much material for that song than what you heard. So I just wrote so many different things, because I knew what I wanted the song to do, and I knew that I wanted the song to feel like, it's called Unrest. It should be somebody who is completely conflicted and is hitting some sort of climax, and is sort of feeling this tug away from the wasteland and this tug back to the wasteland. It's kind of like, I want it to feel like a tug of war almost. It took me a while to figure out the structure, and the guys, we all went back and forth with different things, and I'm really happy with where everything landed, and I felt like it did everything, because I wanted parts of it to feel open and alive, but then some of it to feel like robotic and like clunky almost, and those are the times where the character's sort of being called back to the wasteland, or like doubt is being cast upon the idea of like that there's any hope outside of the wasteland, and I really love like playing with that, like lyrically and sonically, and so that song was a lot of fun to work on. It was definitely tough at times, trying to figure out like what's the right thing, like there isn't really a right answer to that. It's like, what do you want it to be?
Come with me! Knowing there's no peace.
That's something that I have seen fans very much debating, is at the end of that song, after the song kind of fades, there's different voices happening. One is calling someone out of the wasteland. There's another voice calling you to come back. And then there's a voice calling it into the borderland. And that's where everybody's like, what is going on at the end of this album? Because then it just ends. And so is there anything you can convey as to that, as to what's maybe happening there, into, because you've seen this wrestle with this character of where he's currently at, the wasteland that he's in, wanting to get out of that, calling and seeking something to take him out of that, to experience that. And you've seen that something actually start to appear throughout the album, kind of trying to wake him up a bit. And so then it ends with the call into the borderland, which to me, is someone who really likes film and digging into some of that stuff, I'm like, that's interesting. That's how it ends.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can compare there at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, well, what I would say is for people to go back and watch the Parasite video and short film that we did, and the answers to your question are there. So like we, well, it was on purpose, like, you know, but we want people to, I don't know, in a time period that we're in, where everything's instant gratification, we've lost the sense of imagination and wonder and patience and anticipation, except if it's for like a Marvel film, you know. That's about it. Which is really sad that's like it. But so we're just trying to I don't know, kick against the modern like marketing scheme of things. And so I would say is to go back and watch the video again and think of, and like, I mean, we put subtitles on there for a reason, to make sure everyone can understand what's being said and kind of start piecing together the story. And there's going to be more things that we're going to be releasing that help people understand more and more and fill gaps of songs can only do so much in telling a story. So can even film. And sometimes written narrative helps. You know, anybody that's like read a book and watched a movie, they're like, well, what about this? There's things that a movie can do that a book can't do. And there's, you know, but also nobody would ever want to watch a movie without music, because it would make it really dull and boring. And so we're trying to use all those mediums. And so I would first say just, go back, watch the Parasite short film and music video, and then wait patiently.
Well, that's what I'm gonna do. Now I'm very intrigued to be like, what did I miss in that music video that I now have to go back and try to figure out? That's super sweet. Well, Stephen, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you hopping on and even just the work that you guys are doing. As someone who's a really big fan, where you're one of my favorite bands that's currently doing stuff right now. Thank you for it, and even just the art and the effort you're putting into. It's entertaining. I love it. I'm entertained by it, but also it also means personally a lot. Where I always joke with my wife, because she loves worship music, where I'm like, this is my worship music. This is like the genre that and even some of the lyrics where I'm like, it's not just entertainment. It's actually more than that for me and for a lot of people. And so thanks for the effort and all the stuff that you guys put into it. And I'm to it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I mean, that's what we're trying to do. You know, it's so weird that worship is a genre, you know. We're just trying to make music that points people to hope in Christ and beauty in Christ and rest in Christ, and whatever genre that is, whatever that's doing for you, you know, good. You know, and also just I do appreciate, because what I want more good Christian art out there as well, because I think the gospel message is the most compelling and wonderful message that's out there. If it is truly understood and communicated properly, you know, that to me, I just want more art that is working to show that. And so if anybody listens to this that is an artist and you paint or you write stories or you are in a band or whatever you do, give the rest of us more of that. I would be grateful. So
Yeah, that's awesome. If people want to support you and want to support Wolves of the Gate and the stuff that you guys are doing, how can they help? Because we live in the age of streaming, which is great and wonderful for people to find stuff. Isn't that great for making money and keeping the lights on and feeding your family? So if people want to support the art, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, I mean, stream it, buy merch, share it with people. Yeah, that's the comment on things that you like things that you like. That all that helps push us into the algorithm. Sometimes I feel like we get lost in the algorithm, and so the more people that are doing that's helpful for us. And that's it.
That's awesome. Well, man, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. Always a good conversation.
Into the borderland.